Hello, I'm Eric Matisik, co-chair of Denver Startup Week. Last year, we were able to bring the global audience together for Denver Startup Week, and this year, we're excited to welcome that global audience back as we celebrate and showcase the best of entrepreneurship that the Denver ecosystem in Colorado has to offer. In Hotel Engine and WeWork, and our track sponsors who've made all the great content you're hearing today possible, which includes our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, our growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, design track sponsor, Battery 621 and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and the spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing this excitement to the entire week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing Company, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, Gusto, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage Path, Red Bull Basement, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and the VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our sponsors and member sponsors who are listed on the screen, and thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now, let's get to it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Denver Startup Week. I am Michael Ostro, and I'm the Maker Track Chair, as well as a member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you so much for joining Denver Startup Week for our 10th anniversary. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a place where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, and that is regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you goes out to our sponsors for their support and helping us make Denver Startup Week free for everyone and accessible to all. And I also want to thank Agora.io. They are the MakerTrack sponsor, so thank you, Agora, for making this happen. And thank you for joining us. Enjoy Denver Startup Week and make the most out of it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Murphy. I am with Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, and I'm here to host our panel today, Food and Beverage and the Steps to Growth. I'm joined by some awesome panelists who are going to share their experiences in the food and beverage production world. We're going to have some conversation and then offer the opportunity at the end for some audience questions and answers. Although you can put those in the chat at any time, we'll be monitoring that and can clarify anything that we talk about. To briefly introduce all of our panelists, I'll go through and then I'll allow everyone some time to introduce themselves. So my colleague from Ditto, Dom Williams, is with us. We also have Patrick Weber, co-founder of Basecamp Copac. Lauren Shrensky, founder, of Whisket Here, and Michael Roy with the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. And before we start, I just want to give a big thank you to Denver Startup Week and Agora for having us. Denver Startup Week for having us, and Agora for sponsoring the Maker Track. I think folks who are attending today are familiar with the Denver Startup Week schedule, but there are lots of other sessions for the next several days. So sign up for sessions that you're super interested in, and we hope you have a great week. With that said, so we'll start with Patrick and Lauren. Maybe Lauren, you can go first. Just give us some of your businesses and your background and how you got into food production and what really drew you to it.
Sorry, did not unmute. Started in 2011. Getting into nutrition, I got my nutrition background and certifications in sports nutrition and health and wellness. And I love to bake. It's always been a passion of mine. So I started baking protein bars back in 2011, 12, and started making those, and had a business called Bravo Bars. And then kind of morphed it in the last couple of years to 5280 Bars, which is a gluten-free bar, paleo bar that had CBD in it, and 25 milligrams of CBD in the bar. So while I have that, I had my own kitchen. And during COVID, since things had slowed down considerably, decided that maybe we should start renting out the space, because I noticed there were a lot of bakers coming into the marketplace during COVID. A lot of people were at home baking breads and cakes and all the things. And so there isn't really a kitchen for just bakers. There's always caterers, there's always other places, but not just for bakers. And it was a niche that I felt needed to happen. So we opened up Whisket Here, and in the current kitchen that I was using. And we have plans to grow it and launch it kind of bigger and better, and all the things, but it's strictly for bakers by a baker myself. So it's kind of nice, and I can help people grow their businesses from startup, since I've already done that. So kind of an incubator as well. So.
Awesome. Patrick, you want to give us an introduction and share a bit about your background?
Absolutely. A lot of similarities from Lauren's story to ours. My brother and I started a bar called 4 Points Bar. We started making them back in 2008 and launched it in 2014. And our adventure took us, from making them in our own kitchen to sharing space in a commissary, to renting space in a commissary, to speaking with co-packers along the way. We made some really good connections, but one of them was not so good, and a co-packer that we had partnered with had almost put us out of business. So we decided to go the route of buying our own equipment and finding a place to go. A local food scientist, local to Boulder, let us set up our equipment, and off we were going, and everything was saved. Then we started looking for our own space because we got tired of sharing it with everybody, and we ended up finding some space in Denver. And two of the partners from 4 Points decided from that experience, like Lauren had just said, that we wanted to help other businesses avoid the pitfalls that we walked into. But also we had big equipment and big space, and we needed something to do. And he and I decided to launch Basecamp Co-Packing, which, is an incubator of sorts, but also can handle, medium high volume of certain products as well. So that's how we went from making energy bars in the kitchen to co-packing numerous products for other companies.
That's awesome. And before, I want to ask both of you a little bit more about your background, but Michael, do you want to share a bit about how you got into your current role of work, and maybe some of the most interesting things that you see with the Department of Public Health?
Sure. So my name is Michael Roy, and I've been a senior level public health investigator for DDPHE since 2014. Before I started working for the health department, though, I was in the industry. So I was 20 years as a chef, general manager, working in food and beverage operations. And I kind of made the move over to the regulatory side of things. So that gives me an understanding of what it takes to operate a kitchen, as well as the insight on what the regulatory requirements are for getting a restaurant up and off the ground. During my time with the health department, I've worked with hundreds of startup businesses, for people going from a farmer's market to a brick and mortar or trying to grow that way. So I'm just glad to be here to help you navigate that process and answer any questions you might have about it.
Awesome. So Patrick and Lauren, I'll let just unmute yourself when you are able to answer, but you both kind of talked about your spaces as incubator spaces. Is there kind of a number one issue that rises to the top when you're working with a new brand or company that they come to you and say, this is my biggest need aside from space?
I think for me, from what I've found, it's understanding the industry and what they need, I guess, to start their business is an issue. People don't know that, if they're coming from baking at home and want to start a business, they're like, oh, I want to get more space. Okay, but do you have a business license? Do you have insurance? They don't know all of those things that they need to start the business. And so I think that's something that I know Patrick and I both have gone through it. We know these things, like, what do you need? And then, we reach out to someone like Michael. What do you need? Like, you need a certificate of affidavit. You need all of these things, and they don't know the specifics. And so I think coming to places where Patrick and I are that can help them navigate those startup questions that are maybe sometimes a little bit harder to find on the internet, we can help navigate that a little bit better.
Absolutely. Everything you said there, Lauren, you said was spot on. I think making the leap from, your favorite recipe to making it a brand that can sit on a shelf, there's a lot of really interesting parts to that and exciting parts to that, but there's so much in between and outside of the lines that you have to learn to get there. It's the food industry is a very challenging terrain, and knowing where to go sometimes can be for help can be very tough to lay all this out. So reaching out to your health department, reaching out to Dado, reaching out to other food businesses, we're all we never got turned away when we asked questions. Answers were always coming. Everyone's willing to help. So I think it's just knowing where to go, where are those resources for help. We'll take phone calls and emails, even if there's something that's not in our wheelhouse. We're happy to direct and offer advice, if it's applicable. And I think that especially the health department, if you're going to open your own space, if you're going to you have a complicated process, things like that's a great place to start, because there are so many regulations and there for food safety purpose that they can help you with.
That's great. Michael, just preemptively, do you know if there are kind of regular webinars or panels to help small food businesses navigate the health requirements?
No, there isn't regular panels now. Unfortunately, COVID disrupted a lot of our routine activities. So we're just in the process now of rebuilding some of those things we had in place before the pandemic. But you know what? We do have a website, and the website really is just an awesome encyclopedia of knowledge for anybody that needs, and that's denvergov.org. So a really simple website. If you look up even like a small business services or commercial kitchen. So if anything, what I wanted to add in this whole process, what seems really daunting is if you're starting as a cottage food producer and you want to grow your business, well, the next big step is to move that food operation from your home into a commercial kitchen. And that's the first step where sometimes I see some missteps taken, and it can really kind of dig you in a hole right out of the gates if you're not prepared to do it correctly. So that's the challenges that you have, is moving from your home to a commercial kitchen, and you can go online and find the definitions of commercial kitchens. Really, they are just an approved area where we're going to look at and make sure it's up to code. It meets all the requirements for what you have planned to produce there, and that you can do it safely and people don't get sick when they buy your product. So that's really what we're here to help you with. And we have a team of experts that are here to help you answer those questions when they arise, when you're making that transition.
As folks grow, And Lauren and Patrick, as you started to grow, what are some of the really awesome things that you experienced as you moved into your own spaces or as you moved into commercial kitchen spaces? And what are some of those stumbling blocks that you hit? What were the mistakes that businesses should know about, but they're not as necessarily intuitive as maybe you see? And maybe Michael, you can shed some light on some of those big missteps that you just mentioned that are pretty common. It sounds like it's pretty common, at least.
Yeah, I can go, or Patrick can go. It's, moving into a big kitchen is daunting. It's a daunting process to move from your home kitchen to paying rent. And, part of that has got to go into your bottom line. And, all those things happen. And you have to be prepared and, know your numbers and know your margins and all of those things. And that can be a daunting task to start out because you're not realizing what goes into, running a kitchen. Now we both run kitchens and we're on that other side. So now we both know like what it was we're like, oh, I could get that for cheaper, but really you don't know what goes into the other side of the kitchen side too. So there's a lot to be said for, just moving from your kitchen to another, to a commercial space. But for me, I loved having my own space. It's great to have your kitchen but the expense is huge. It's a daunting task. So unless you have backing and have means to continue it, you really want to make sure I kind of tell people who are just starting out, you might want to keep your day job for a bit before you jump full circle into it. It's a daunting task. So, yeah.
It is. It's the reality. From having bigger space, bigger responsibilities, and bigger expenses. I think to add on that too is, a rule of thumb that I've learned from not necessarily just the brand side or just the co-packing side, but is almost anywhere in my life is I always want to add, 20% more. And I put 20% more on everything, 20% more ingredients for a run. Expect that it's going to cost 20% more, that's going to take 20% longer, especially, in the middle of a pandemic, supply lines are crunched, inflation is pushing costs up, your resources are strained, your partners are strained. I think nothing's worse than trying to toe a line and coming in short, and that's, for a client or for yourself. And so always bank on that something is going to be a little more expensive, take a little bit longer. It's going to be a little bit harder. So then when you come in under that, you can feel really proud about the win that you got and you can build on that. So you take these small wins and then you build on them. So when you go into it with realistic expectations, I think that helps. And that helped us a lot.
And what I really wanted to add on to that was, I think just starting off, just to pull, the attendees back to the basics here. So when you're at your home and you're wanting to grow this business from your home to somewhere else, I mentioned that you have to work in a commercial kitchen to produce that food. Well, you're also going to have to obtain a license to sell that food. Okay, now the licenses, there's a bunch of them out there, but the most common that we see in the food industry, just to give everybody kind of a blanket overview, is going to be a catering license. That's probably one of the more least expensive and easiest to obtain. You have a mobile cart license. So you're going to have a cart that you're going to be making food in. We have a mobile truck license. So that's a self-propelled kitchen. And then you have your retail food license, which is kind of a brick and mortar facility. So you have to take a look at your business plan and really have it organized and spend extra time in the planning before you move forward to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. So you need to identify what license you're going to go after is going to be your first step. How am I going to operate? From there, you need to take a look at the commercial kitchen side of things. And that's where I also see a lot of missteps taken in the first place. If you're a caterer, you can use a ghost kitchen or what Denver calls a commissary, which is going to be a commercial kitchen that is your base of operations for food production. And also another thing, when you go get a license, it also means you're going to be regulated and you're going to be dealing with people like myself who are going to be calling you and asking if you're up to code and what's going on. So when you identify that business plan, and you also need to identify your commercial kitchen that you're going to work out of, the next steps from there would be realizing, okay, is this commercial kitchen set up for the business that I have it intended to be? Kitchens for baking, like Lauren have, look a lot different than kitchens that are set up for seafood or an Asian restaurant or a steakhouse. There's just a lot of different equipment that you're going to need in that kitchen in order to produce that menu safely. So that's when, as a health department, we're going to take a look and say, all right, if you're a baker, let's match up your baking needs to the commercial kitchen you're applying to use. Do those two match up? We see a lot of people that don't put the time in and have those wrong, where we have to send it back to you saying, hey, you know what, this is not up to code. This does not meet the equipment that we're going to require for your menu. That's going to delay your opening, weeks to months, if ever we have to go in circles and send things back to you. So that's the advice I'm giving, is really to take a look up front, to put a solid business plan, identify what kind of kitchen you're going to need to produce that business plan, have that all ready to go, and then start working to reaching out to the health department on what you can do.
Thanks all. And just Patrick, I think you mentioned it very briefly, but Patrick and Lauren primarily, are you seeing brands and businesses that you're working with run into pandemic supply chain challenges that are making that development of a business plan, that rollout of their product more difficult? I know at some point in the pandemic, my spouse was unable to find flour because he wanted to make his own pizza dough. Are we seeing some of those supply chain issues that other industries are seeing?
Absolutely. In every aspect, from packaging to, flour, nuts, seed, you name it. It's, regardless of what's causing it, even suppliers out there that have a good grasp on their flow, it seems like everybody's sort of seizing up, upon the pandemic as a way to, catch up themselves or add, profit, or if you haven't raised prices in a long time, get those up. And not to say that's happening across the board. It's we've seen a little bit of it, but yeah, the supply lines, they're really tough, and you have to, the biggest piece of advice on that is to have redundancy in your supply chain, and that's having two suppliers for each type of flour, for each nut, or whatever it is that goes in, because inevitably your primary supplier is going to come up short at some point, or they're going to be bought out, or somebody larger is going to come in and sign a contract and you're going to get pushed out. And we've seen that too. So it's really good. Make, buddy, make friends with your suppliers, get on the phone with them, not just email, talk to them, let them know who you are, and get them on your side, because they're going to be your ally and your best friend when those come up, when those problems arise. And I would do the same with packaging, and even down to the small stuff, is put in the legwork now, speaking to what Michael said, is put in that extra time, sharpening that axe before you go to cut the tree down, so to speak. And you'll, it'll be better for you when you do it.
Anything to add, Lauren?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with everything Patrick said. That's just what's going on right now, every industry. And so, we've told some of our people just to maybe, let's get it all from the same supplier. Let's work on grouping our orders a little bit together to make that happen a little bit easier. But having more than one supplier is huge, because for each thing, because they'll nickel and dime you on one, but then you'll find a little bit cheaper over here. And, it's going to flip flop all the time. And you always want to be able to watch, because those nickels and dimes count, they add up, and that, hurts somebody's bottom line. And again, that's got to be in your plan to know that, this business and food business fluctuates. Everything's up and down, and pricing and everything. Almonds, the price of almonds can go up in California, and then all of a sudden, your bar is, twice as much all of a sudden. You're like, wait, what just happened? So, you really do have to watch the industries. You have to watch the weather. You have to watch what's happening to make sure you're going to get your product. So there's a lot behind it that I don't think people realize when they just were like, I have a great recipe, which is where I was initially too. Everyone's like, oh, I got a great recipe, I want to start. You don't realize what really you need to focus on once you get started. It's an MBA in food real quick. So.
Yeah. I've heard a lot from other manufacturers that I've been working with recently that the packaging issue is becoming especially problematic. And even major brands, some of which we have factories of in the Denver metro area, are having their own packaging problems. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Patrick, because I don't know that folks starting to prepare their goods for consumer packaging think about what their packaging needs are going to be when they roll out their product. So that's one that we're hearing a lot of, so I'm glad it came up. For Patrick and Lauren, we did have a question come through that I actually think would be helpful to talk about now. Just some guidance on how to seek space. How do you estimate how much commercial space that you need? What are the resources that you've used to find it? I mean, Lauren, you're a ghost kitchen, and Patrick, you're a co-packer, but you used a commercial kitchen previously. So what are some of the resources that you two have used as you were looking for space, and what works for you? And then what were some resources that you just weren't reliable enough?
I think for me, initially, it was, just Googling kitchens in Denver, right? I mean, initially back in the day, it was just like, I don't know, let's just Google and find out, where the Denver commissaries are. And, you kind of start there and you start to tour them. And I tell people, tour them, go look at them, make sure they're good for you. I mean, you don't know what they are in paper and looking on on a website. You got to go and make sure, is it clean? Do you like it? Are you going to get space? Is it first come, first serve? Do you get to schedule? There's many things that you need to look at when you're looking for a kitchen, not just the equipment, but also, okay, yes, it has the equipment I need, but will I get the times that I want? Am I going to be at, midnight to, 6 in the morning? Like, what's my calendar going to look like going forward? So, you really have to kind of look at all of that when you're looking at kitchens. People ask me when they come in, what times do you have available? We are a first come, first serve, but we have a calendar and everybody can go on there and schedule their time, block it out, but if you want it every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, go put it in there. But, you got to show up. Otherwise, you lose that time slot. But yeah, I mean, you have to really you got to focus on all of it. It's like the little details that are really important that you're going to forget, and you're going to sign a contract and then you're going to be like bummed that you didn't find out these things ahead of time. So, I mean, Patrick's a great resource. I'm a great resource. I mean, there's also a couple other websites. We use a website called the Food Corridor. I don't know, Patrick, I don't know if you use that, but they actually offer a kitchen network. So you can go on there and see where there are other kitchens who use their calendar and site. And there's also, and I just got on this, is the Pantry Collective, which is just coming to Denver. I don't know if you've all heard of this, but it just came, and they're looking for kitchens and trying to help kind of be a one-stop shop website to help facilitate that getting to other kitchens. So something to look into. They're just coming to Denver from the Midwest, I believe. So take a look at those.
Yeah, I would just, to add on to that, start with your local government. Start with, Sarah and Dom. We ping them all the time, like, hey, what's out there? Or the local health department. They go to a lot of spaces. There's probably a lot of spaces on there that don't have necessarily advertise, or they're on Google. I know the Colorado Department of Agriculture has a list up of co-packers and commercial kitchens. It's fairly current most of the time. I know they're pretty backed up on some of that stuff, but start there. All the spaces that we've found throughout the lifespan of 4 Points, and even Base Camp, we've been in this spot since its inception, but was word of mouth actually in the industry, going to food shows, distributors. I mean, who knows better than the people that are in this space? Lauren, when you're doing, if you heard of Naturally Boulder, join Naturally Boulder. There's a wealth of information. There are lots of people, great businesses willing to help, willing to give advice. Word of mouth is huge, and that's how we rely on a lot of that for our business too, on the co-packing side, and even into retail, selling your product. Lots of places like that. So start with the local government, Google it, reach out to Lauren, ourselves. We know a lot of other co-packers. We know of some other commercial kitchens. And one, just to touch on the point with the commercial kitchen too, is yes, absolutely. And even a co-packer, no matter where you're going to put your food product at the end of the day, go to that space, meet the people, interview them, look for records, ask to see their inspection reports. You don't know who's baking or cooking before you. You don't know who's using that machinery. It could be an allergen cross contaminant. There's a lot of things to consider outside of the timing and the cost and things like that when you're using a shared space. And so I think, like Whisket here, that's just for bakers. That's great because there's not a lot of places that just focus on that. And so she's going to be keenly aware to what's going to pop up for the baker. Whereas if you're sharing a commercial kitchen with, bakers and caterers who are, using, fryers and things like, there's a lot of things at play there that can affect your product and your company down the line. So do your due diligence for sure on those places. Definitely talk to your local government, talk to your health inspectors. We've had a lot of success, just having those open lines of communication.
Michael, anything folks should know about seeking out commercial space when they're moving from their cottage food production into a more formalized product and consumer good? Excuse me. Anything that they should know from your side of things?
Well, in order for a facility to be considered a commissary, they need to be in good standing with the health department and regulated. So that's going to be the first thing you need to pull up as a red flag to make sure those two are taken care of. And then to add on to what these other people are saying, we're going to take a look at, once you decide that you have a commercial kitchen you want to use, we have a form that's called an affidavit of commissary that you need to fill out. And that needs to be approved by the health department. Pretty much this form states up top, it states the facility that's going to be used for the commissary. And then below it has the operator and what the operator is going to be doing in that commissary. So it's warewashing, it's grilling, it's all those different procedures. We're going to ask you for that information before we approve it. That way we can match the commissary to the operator and make sure all the necessary equipment is in place for that operator to be successful. So if you attempt to use, I don't know, maybe a baking commissary and you're a full-on caterer and she doesn't have grills or fryers, the health department's going to take a look at that affidavit saying, hey, you're trying to use a space that doesn't have grills or fryers. Where are you going to cook that food? And we're going to ask you to justify that before we approve it. So just know that we're going to be that next layer. Is once you found a commercial kitchen, hey, we want to use it as a commissary. We're going to take a look at that affidavit and give it once more over to make sure that it's set up and you're going to be set up for success. Other than that, the last thing I'll say is from a health department side, I just want everybody out there to know we want you to succeed. It isn't our job to come in and play an aha gotcha game. No, we want you to succeed. We want, this food industry in Denver to rebound better than it was before and to grow. So we're out there not looking to try to hold you back, but looking for ways to help you succeed. So you can ask us those type of questions. We'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
And I think I'll add from my limited experience, I work with some brands who are food brands and going into a new space. The health department and having the right type of kitchen to have a commercial production is one step. If you're taking over your own space, like Lauren found her own kitchen, there is an added layer of complexity that you'll have to deal with the Denver zoning. Folks. And that's just an added thing that you'll be responsible for that you won't necessarily be responsible for if you go into a commercial kitchen or a commissary, excuse me. This isn't an endorsement of any one model or another. I think you have to find what works for your business, but that is something else to consider, that you do need to then start liaising with another Denver department. Michael?
Yeah, Sarah, I was going to add on to that. Yeah, especially when it comes to zoning, that is another big misstep that can really put you in a hole right out of the gates. An example I'm going to use is a recent example that we just came across a few weeks ago, where it's a food operation that signed a lease in a strip mall to take over a facility that used to be a clothing store. Well, that operator didn't realize exactly how much work it's going to take to turn that clothing store into a commercial kitchen before they sign that lease. I mean, we're talking about, you have to break the concrete out of the floor to put in floor sinks, talking about a grease interceptor or a grease trap, all the plumbing. That is a huge ask. If your axe isn't sharp before you start chopping down that tree, you're going to get in way over your head before you even realize it. So please understand, with zoning, if something has to be zoned for food service in order to be considered a commercial kitchen. If it's a clothing store or some other type of operation, you're going to have to go through a plan review process in order to change that from a clothing store to a kitchen, which is a lot of work in months.
A lot of work in months. We'll throw that back out, Michael, as well. Yeah, I did that, and it was eye-opening, to say the least. It was a lot of work and a lot of stress and heartache in a couple of days there. And so, yeah, it's a lot of work, and I didn't know that to begin with. But all good now, but yes.
And I'll just say that an additional resource, Lauren mentioned a few that she's worked with. Denver has resources, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain that there's a commercial kitchen list, if not necessarily directory, but just a list somewhere on the Denver website, City and County of Denver website. And I don't think it's limited to only City and County of Denver facilities. I do think it's a commissary list that includes some that are located elsewhere in the metro area. You can also work with a professional real estate broker who can help you identify spaces that are properly zoned, additional resources. And this is if you're getting your own space, but if you're not just utilizing a commissary, if you're looking for your own space, you can work with a broker. They are professionally trained to help you find the type of zoning and space and negotiate on those lease rates, so that if you do get into a space that wasn't built out to be a food production facility, they can help you negotiate on the process of going through that. So those are some extra resources. I'm sure we'll put some links in the chat by the end of the session, but just know that realtors are available to help you as well. And then, shifting a little bit, what are the really fun parts of running a food-based production business? And what are the funny parts, I guess, fun stories? I think folks always want to hear about snafus that end up working out okay because you learn a lesson. So can anyone share some really great parts of being a food producer right now?
Let's not all jump at once, Patrick.
I was waiting for the other one to go. I'm happy to start. There's a lot of really fun parts about it. From the brand standpoint, it's a product. If it's a product you created, you know why you're doing it. It's always back to the why, and as long as you keep the why, first, front and center in what you're doing, then you'll stay on track. So that's what we did with 4 Points. Is we always knew why we were doing it. We knew we wanted to create a bar for ourselves and for the outdoor enthusiast. We wanted it to be to give back, conservation, 1% for the planet. We know we wanted that to be a part of our makeup. So a lot of that stuff on the brand, once you get going to a lot of these shows and the partnerships that you make, those are really fun. And it definitely helps erase some of the tougher moments you're going to have, because they're going to come. And there's so many tough parts to hardly, you can't even really go into all of them. It's just it's a tough landscape to navigate. And for the co-packing side, we sort of had a leg up going in there with, we launched a product, we had this equipment, so we already knew mostly what we're doing. What's really fun about that is watching the new clients come in and helping them go from grandma's favorite, recipe spice to a fully wrapped product that's in a box and going out and the smile on their face, seeing like, hey, this is it. This is the start. This is the beginning of a long, long, fun journey. So those are probably the moments that we like the most, are knowing that we're doing our part to help and seeing others, succeed. The funny things, most of those come along with it's just experiences, learning. I can say when we first bought our equipment, we really had no idea how to use it. I'm not going to say you should go out and buy mass manufacturing equipment without having proper training, because I can tell you the first run we did through it as R&D before we had found our space, just to try things out. One of the partners left a giant plastic scoop in the extruder. And so we got to find out what it's like when an extruder tries to extrude a hard piece of plastic through all your food. So funny, yeah, expensive also, but a good lesson learned why you have standard operating procedures around equipment. And luckily, it's one of those things that we were allowed, to learn from, and we weren't really in business at that stage with that equipment. So that's kind of our funny story. It would have been fun to be a fly on the wall watching us learn how to use all this large equipment at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with Patrick. Obviously there's all the hard days that come in with it, but yeah, there are some funny days. I was laughing. We just got when he's talking about equipment, we just got a new freezer and they're like, well, we'll deliver it, but we'll just drop it outside. I'm like, but how do I get it inside? They're like, well, you have to take it in. I go, I'm 5 foot nothing. What do you want me to do to get that in? It was the most comical thing I've ever seen, trying to get this freezer into the door. And so I ended up getting some guys to come help me because this was ridiculous. But it's just little things like that. You just laugh. You're like, well, you can deliver it only to the door, but you don't get it inside the door. It's little things like that you're just like, or equipment. We got a sealing machine and it came with hardly any instructions. And I was like, okay, what do you do with it? How do you make it work? It came with a stand and I didn't know how to put the stand together. You just have to sit there and just go with the flow some days because it's frustrating. And, once you get it done and it works and everyone loves it, you're like, this is great. But, getting it there was not so fun. So yeah, there are fun moments. And like he said, I love meeting other people. I love meeting other, people in our industry. Everybody is so sweet and nice usually. Unless they're overly competitive about something or other, but for the most part, everybody in this industry, everyone's done the same thing. We've all been in the same situations with commissary kitchens. We've all been in the same starting the business from scratch, right? Everybody's been there. So we all have our story on where we started, but we've all kind of been through the same trenches. And so it's nice to have that camaraderie of a group of people, just to hear the stories and understand it and, grow from it. And everybody grows from it. We all figure it out. And, that's the fun part. And I think with Patrick having a product and I had a product, and I think when you see someone love your product, that's also something that really helps you move forward in a day, just knowing that you help someone get a product that they love and help them in some way. And I think that's also so that's why I think, like he said as well, just having that mission. Why did you do it? Because if you don't have really a reason to do it, I think you're not gonna do well. You're gonna get so frustrated that it might not be what you thought it was gonna be. You have to want to do it and love it because it's what you have a passion for. Because this industry is tough at times, and you have to just trudge through and get through it. But it's life and it's fun and it has its ups and downs. But I think it's a fun industry. So.
You both touched very briefly on equipment, which we haven't really talked about. That's another potentially high cost area. Are equipment instructions better or worse than IKEA instructions? And are there customer service, can you contact customer service to help you understand, or are you really on your own figuring it out?
I'm going to say I was on my own for a lot of it. It seems like they're about, I don't know who you're calling to get information, but a lot of times they're like, oh, just go watch some video on YouTube. And I'm like, a YouTube video to get this to work is not going to help me. Like, there's no, like, I don't understand. So it's tough. You buy equipment and you have to like research it a lot before to know what you're doing or know someone else who's used it, because it's hard sometimes when you're getting an extruder or you're getting a sealing machine or you're getting something you have no clue. You know you need it for your business, but you have no idea how it works. And it's funny even watching people come into the kitchen when you have like a RoboCoop or you have a food processor or you have something, and people don't know how to use them because they weren't using that specific thing in their home kitchens. So there's a learning curve when you do also go to a commissary kitchen on how to use that equipment specifically, because it's very different from your home kitchen. We have convection ovens in our kitchens. You don't have that in your home kitchen. So you've got to work on the temperature gauge. Everything changes when you change. So everyone's like, oh, my recipe didn't work in your kitchen. No, but you have to test it. There's going to be some loss until you turn that dial in to understanding what the difference between the two ovens are. So there is a lot of learning curve to equipment. It's tough.
Do commissaries tend to offer any type of like equipment walkthrough or guidance, like your kitchen or others? You do?
Yeah,
okay.
We do. I mean, I do. I take people through it if they don't know how to use something. I usually, when I tour the kitchen, I'm like, do you understand how to use everything in the kitchen prior to them signing a contract with me? Because obviously I don't want you to break it, because that's also in the contract. I don't want you to break anything, but yes, I do walk them through if they don't know how to use it, but also if you have your own specific equipment that you use for your specific recipe or product, if it's not a huge situation, you can also bring that in to use that with your specific product, as long as you keep it with your stuff and, that way no one else uses it. But yeah, we do, I at least walk through everything and make sure, everyone knows. I don't want anybody to slice a finger off or, lose something. So yeah, then Michael will come after me.
Yeah, that's right. And hey, I did want to piggyback on top of what you're saying over there, Lauren. And just from a regulator standpoint, I want to make sure the audience is aware, once you move into being a licensed operator, you are no longer allowed to go to Walmart and buy the stuff there. You have to really move to commercial equipment, away from your home equipment, or it's not going to be approved for use. The reason being, it's just built differently. A lot of those machines, the mixers, the refrigerators, they're just designed to take the punishment that a commercial equipment needs to take versus the stuff for the home. So keep that in mind when you're also looking at equipment, that it needs to be commercial grade.
Yeah, that's 100%. And we're not a commissary, so we do the manufacturing. So I definitely do not recommend the route that we took of buying large, complicated equipment and just expecting that you're going to get an instruction booklet, because the instruction booklet with these are more like diagrams for wiring, and there's a lot that they're not going to tell you. If you buy it from a manufacturer, it's brand new. A lot of times they'll ask you, do you want training? And of course that comes at an added cost, a really nice one too, if they're out of state. If you're buying it used, find yourself a good equipment tech that can walk you through it, learn it, because you're not just talking about what is this going to do to my product. You're talking about what can I possibly do to this product that's going to injure somebody down the line. And that's a business killer. And that's also, food safety is your number one priority when you are making a food product. A lot of people they're trusting what they go to the store, what they're going to buy. You need that trust for your brand to sell, but you need that trust because it's your duty to be food safe. And this equipment can do a lot of stuff. The pieces can break off, and you can operate it inappropriately. So it's definitely knowing the equipment before you buy it is my advice there. And if not, and then you go to a co-packer like ourselves, we will show you the equipment. When we bring on a client or a product, we do R&D at the beginning so that you can see the difference between making your product at home on Walmart equipment versus coming in and working on commercial and industrial equipment, because it's going to change your product, it's going to change your process, and it's just one of those things that it's really cool to have big machines that do lots of stuff really fast and make you more money, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and so keep that in mind, that you don't just get the instruction booklet with it and off you go. It's a little more involved than that.
All right. We have about 10 minutes left. I know Lauren may have to leave for the rest of the session. Her pup was having some issues this morning, so she may have to attend to that. But Dom, maybe you can help us work through the chat and question and answers, and we'll answer them as best we're able.
Yeah, so first we had a question from anonymous attendee saying Goldbelly is helping restaurants make money by helping them understand 3PL and get into overnight delivery to customers. What is the city doing to help already certified restaurants and chefs explore new business models while maintaining public health standards?
I'm going to toss this to Michael.
Really, from a city standpoint and the public health agency standpoint, we were all in COVID mode for the pandemic. And just at the end of May is when we started getting out of this and began doing food safety inspections again. So we're approaching our inspections after the pandemic with empathy, understanding what the food industry has gone through the pandemic and how challenging it has been. But we're still also going in there with an eye to help them out, saying, hey, I understand you're short-staffed or the business is doing that way. There's no asterisk in the regulations that says if you're short-staffed, you don't have to wash your hands. You know, you still have to wash your hands, and we still have to make sure customers are safe when they're coming to the facility. So in that sense, we're just re-engaging with the community after the pandemic and the restaurant industry, assessing what happened, where they're at right now. And I think we take it on a case-by-case basis when we go into a restaurant to evaluate them and say, all right, these are the opportunities you have to get better. These are the opportunities you have to work more safely. I think when it comes to as far as growing and developing businesses, I think that's outside of our kind of wheelhouse. We're really more on the regulation side. We're going to make sure people are operating safely first, and then we can kind of assist them in growing. Hopefully that answered the question thoroughly.
Yeah.
And I just dropped a resource into the chat. There is on the DIDO website, there is a checklist for starting a business, and whether you're brand new or growing, there are lots of points in this checklist as you scale into a more formalized outside of that cottage business, acquiring space, utilizing space, being licensed, making sure that you're registered with the Colorado Secretary of State as a business. So it at least gives you a list to follow. And maybe you're past some of these steps already, but it can give you some guidance on where to start as you're looking for some resources.
Another question we had from Mark Rothenberg was, how do you balance the limits, time, money, etc., of being a solo entrepreneur with the requirements of a startup?
That's a really good question. Yeah, balance is key. And, being an entrepreneur, no matter what field you're in, or just having a really high demand job, there's trying to find balance in life is key, but especially, you're launching a product. If you're trying to start a business, you're starting from scratch. You really have to make time on the personal side. I like mine in the morning, so I try to give myself time in the morning to take care of me, so that I know that I can take care of everybody else throughout the rest of the day and my clients. So finding that work-life balance, there's a lot of good books out there that, from really smart people that have found ways to do that. And hopefully, you can find one that really resonates with you. As far as the business goes with money and budgeting is tough, especially for a startup. Everything is a projection, and projections are all made up, right? So, you do your best, and you reach out to those that maybe have been there before, or those that might know a little more than you, and you see what they did, and like I said earlier, with the 20% more, I mean, I'm not joking, add 20% to everything, because it'll cover you down the road, and especially in your margins. And when you're balancing out, you know, and all your ingredients go up, your packaging goes up, you had to move to a co-packer, which is going to be a little more expensive to have somebody else make your product for you, right? You have to think about that ahead of time, because when you make that leap and you think, well, I made my product right here, it was so cheap, but that was your time. Now you're relying on others' time, and that time has to be compensated. So, you know, build out, lay out everything on paper, on a computer, voice, whatever you want to do. It's just all the things that you can think of that are going to cost you money. Put down and do your six to 12 months, and hopefully from there you're able to, you know, make it that stick. But yeah, the balance, find balance personally, and find that balance in your business, and then really try to build a budget and stick to it.
It is very possible that there are sessions on making the jump from, you know, doing something on the side in the background as a side hustle into that being your full-time job. I would maybe look at the rest of the Denver Startup Week sessions to see if there's content about that where they speak specifically to that, because I think that could be a 2-hour discussion. And I could share anecdotes that I've seen online from folks who coach entrepreneurs, but that's not my own experience, so I don't feel comfortable sharing it. Hey, Michael, really quick, we have a question about meal kit startups. I mean, aside from licensing and understanding what kind of inspections, do those have any special type of carve out in our local regulations?
No real carve out, but I can tell you during the pandemic, you know, the commissary I inspect, just about all the caterers turned to prepackaged meals in order to stay afloat. So that's a huge industry that really picked up during the pandemic. Really, a catering license is really about all that's really required. That and a solid commissary where you're producing the food. Once you have those two, it's really up to you as the entrepreneur to grow it. So no real special regulations other than just the normal things you have to do to be a caterer.
And then I would point that person back to the checklist for starting a business, because included in that checklist are some resources for mentors, business coaches, training available, some of it free, some of it paid. So in addition to the awesome resources that'll be shared this week through Startup Week, those resources are on our checklist to starting a business. Should I apply for my license before I choose the commercial kitchen?
It's possible, but really, in order to get your license, you're going to need an approved affidavit of commissary in order to do that last check. So you really can't finish it without having the commercial kitchen. So part of obtaining your license is having that approved affidavit, where me or somebody from my team is going to look and make sure the commissary matches up with your business plan.
Hey, Patrick, I know Lauren has, but we've had a couple questions on distribution. Have you worked with distributors? Do you have any quick, I know we only have a couple minutes left in this session, information about working with a distributor or shipping product?
Sure. Yeah, I've worked with numerous distributors, large and small, local to Unified and DPI. So we've got a little bit of experience there. Distributors can be a huge asset. There's only so many deliveries you can make in a day, and depending on the size of your team, if you're out delivering your product, if you're making your product, you're working in your business, you're not working on your business, and someone's got to be there building the business, selling, and that's, no one's going to do that better than you. But distributors can help you do that. Once you have those relationships in place, they're taking all the logistics out of that. Now that's what you want to do, is make sure that you build in into your margin, because you're going to get a lot less as the distributor is going to take, a percentage. And whoever they're working with, whether it be a large retailer, mostly this is a large retailer issue, is they're going to want promos, and they're going to want new product discounts, free fills. These are all things that you have to consider. That's going to be expensive. So partnering with a large distributor is a very expensive move. So you want to make sure you're in the right place and time in your business to make that leap. I would start with the local distributors. Loco Foods up in Fort Collins is a great place to start. They deliver only Colorado. There's a few other really good ones that are local and small. Getting your feet wet with them before trying your hand with the UNFIs and DPIs, Shamrocks of the world is highly recommended, because it is very expensive, but they can help take you to a whole nother level in your business once you're ready.
Awesome. I think we answered most of the questions. My email is in the chat, so if folks have additional questions, please feel free to email me and I'll help connect you with either panelists or resources based on everyone's comfort on our panel. We are out of time this morning, so I just want to thank our panelists again: Patrick with Base Camp Copac, Lauren with Wisket here, and Michael with Denver Department of Public Health, and my colleague Dom, who without this, I would not have been able to, without his help, I would not have been able to host this session. And of course, thank you to Denver Startup Week for their support of all that we do here at DIDO and within the city and county of Denver. So thank you everyone for joining us. I don't know if our DSW folks need to do anything to close us out, but this does end our session. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.